What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I hope you like this video. This is going to be your review for Menudo Forever Young documentary episode 3. So I left off letting you guys know that we had the arrest of the two Menudo kids, and they were fired from the group. And then as a result, 4 of the 5 members resigned because they just got to a point where they were tired, they were being overworked, they were being abused, and what happened with the drug arrest, it just sort of like was icing on the cake, and it was they knew it was time to go, right? So episode 3 sort of overlaps the end of episode 2 a little bit. Okay, so of course they had to replace the 2 guys that they fired, and then they had to turn around and replace the 4 guys that resigned, right? So there were a lot of new faces, and basically their job was to clean up the group. Their job was to come in and reinforce this good boy, image, and get rid of all of the bad juju, right? There were a lot of, we talked about this already. They kind of talked again about the bad contracts that were given. We already talked about that. We talked about the fact that they specifically targeted kids from poor areas of Puerto Rico, so they could exploit them. Because of course, if a poor kid from a poor family, they may not always have the resources to have a lawyer read over their contract. They may not always have the resources to turn down guaranteed $10,000 a week salary for their child. Like, even though their child probably should have been making $100,000, they couldn't really afford to question it because, they needed the money. A lot of the kids were talking about how they felt lonely, they felt isolated. They started talking about the physical abuse. When the 4 kids did resign, there were, meetings, and there were press conferences where they spoke on, why they were leaving the group, and they started talking about that. At this point, they were only talking about the fact that they were being overworked, that they were being mentally and physically abused, emotionally abused, that they were not getting the proper health care, they weren't being supervised properly. They said there was a behind the scenes meeting where Diaz Edguaro, the creator of the group, he was quoted as saying, "You guys are shit. You ain't shit, and I am Menudo." Like, basically, I can replace y'all. I am Menudo. Like, y'all don't run nothing around here. And he did. He replaced them and he moved forward. Eduardo publicly said that this wasn't about abuse. It wasn't about being mistreated. It was just about them trying to get him. They're trying to like basically extort more money out of him and trying to get him to spend more money or what have you. One of the guys talked about how when he joined the group, he had to learn 22 songs in 2 weeks along with the choreography. And again, he was talking about how they were worked. And again, we started seeing conversations about mental, physical, emotional abuse. Now, one of the new kids, I have his name written down. That's why I wanted to say his name. And Angelo. Angelo was actually the youngest member to actually be a part of the group. Up until that point, he was 11 years old when he joined the group, and they, showed when he first joined the group and stuff. Now, he got sick. Early on, he got sick. He had a lung infection, and then after he was hospitalized and everything. And then after he got over the lung infection, he started complaining of abdominal pain. Well, Eduardo was like, "You're just lazy. You don't want to work. You're squandering this opportunity. You need to get on that stage." And he talked about going on stage, and they actually had the video footage of this particular performance where he said he was singing a ballad, and he said he started crying, but he wasn't crying because of the lyrics. He was crying because he was in so much pain. He said he started sweating, and then he started shaking. He was getting so his body started shaking, and he had to actually walk off stage. And they showed the clip from this concert, and you saw him walk off stage. Well, he said immediately after he got off stage, he started throwing up blood, and when they took him to the hospital, he had to have his appendix removed, and the doctor said if he had gotten there a couple of hours later, his appendix would have burst, and that probably could have caused his death. He said it was at that point that he realized they don't really give a damn about me, and he never went back to the group. And what was interesting was they were in the process of filming like this documentary, like mini series type thing, and they, instead of like having to reshoot everything that had him in it, they actually brought in a double for him who was really a girl, and they voice dubbed over all of his parts so that they wouldn't have to like redo the parts that he was in or explain why he was no longer in this movie, because it was more like a mini, it wasn't a documentary, it was more like a mini series. It was a show, so they would have had to, so they brought a girl in to be a stand-in for him. And the kids were saying, the other members were like, we never saw him after he left to go to the hospital. He never came back to the group. Then we start getting into some of the darker things. I mean, mental and physical abuse is dark, but now we're starting to get into some of the sexual abuse. The boys started talking about how they were hazed. Like the new kids, whenever the new guys would come in, they were hazed, they were the new guys. And they said, it was anything from the little stuff to, oh, you got to carry my bags. Oh, you got to open the door, to the more serious things where, some of the older kids might beat up on the younger kids and be really, really mean to them, really rude to them. And it started getting into some like inappropriate behavior. Now, one of the guys, I think it was Angelo again, said that when he first joined the group, he was told they kept coming up to him like they were at rehearsal, and people kept coming up to him talking about something. Hey, they're going to touch your tatas, not tatas, but like tatis, but it was whatever the word was. It meant his genitals, okay? And he was like, what? And he said every time somebody would pass him that day, they were like, oh, they're going to get you. They're going to touch your they're going to grab you, And he was like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? And he said later on that day, after rehearsal, they were in a dressing room. He was by himself. He said next thing he knew, he was being surrounded by like all of these men, like the band members, the crew, and Aguero was there as well. And they said that one of the guys like jumped on him and straddled him as if he was getting ready to, assault him. And then they started laughing and joking like it was all just a big joke. And of course, everybody was in on it because they said, now you really are a part of Menudo. And of course, everybody was in on it because this was actually something they did to everybody. It was like a ritual that they did to everybody. They said Aguero would walk around the kids naked, or would put on really, really, really skimpy, like a towel around his waist. They would go to his hotel room and he would be, naked, or have this towel wrapped around his waist that just literally barely covered anything. And it, was very inappropriate. One of the kids, Angelo had a rough time, his little bit of time with the group. He talked about one of the members of the entourage getting him drunk one night and then assaulting him. And he said it happened multiple times. He said, I'm not saying that Aguero did anything to me because he never did anything to me. He said, but the people that he chose to have around him did this to me. So what ended up happening was there was a journalist by the name of Carmen Janet, and I don't think I'm saying her last name correctly, but I apologize. But she was like an investigative reporter down in Puerto Rico. She was like the equivalent of, like a no nonsense, I'm going to get the facts, get the job done, I'm going to report what's going on. She started doing an expose on the group. She had actually talked to like family members and things like that. So what they ended up getting was a man by the name of Bolivar, who was a photojournalist who used to travel with the group and, take pictures and document things. And he actually even got a licensing agreement from Aguero, and he had a store in New York called Menudo-itis. So he was making money off the group, and I say that for a reason because he ended up being a whistleblower. And a lot of people believed him because they were like, listen, he's losing more by coming forward and exposing the group than he is by keeping his mouth shut, because he actually has a store. He's actually employed by the organization. He actually makes money off of Menudo being successful. The more successful they are, the more merchandise he sells. He has a licensing. He had a whole store. The whole store was just dedicated to Menudo. But he said that he could no longer be quiet about what he saw, the things that he saw, and he was going to tell his story. Well, next thing they know, they're getting ready to film the show. The show gets canceled. The police show up. They shut the show down, and he actually gets arrested. He gets arrested, and next thing you know, he's getting sued for defamation on the things that he was going to say on the show about, Menudo and what was going on with the group. So they thought this would stop him. They thought this would kind of stop the avalanche from falling, but it actually did the opposite. It actually brought more attention to what was going on, and now you started having more people speaking out. You had the parents speaking out. You had some former members speaking out. And what he ended up doing was, once he got out of jail, he literally went right back to the studio. They said he had on a bulletproof vest because he was fearful of his safety, but he still did the show. And as a result of the show, he told it all. He talked about what he saw. He said that he actually witnessed some sexual assaults. He actually saw what was going on. He talked about the physical abuse. He told it all. And as a result, then Eduardo went on another talk show to basically defend himself and tell his side of the story. And once he told his side of the story, then they had like one big show on Christine. Now, I remember Christina. She used to be on the Univision back in the day, and she was sort of like the Puerto Rican version of Oprah. Like, she had this huge platform, this huge talk show, and so they went on there, and they thought that they were going on like a neutral ground, a place where they, like everybody would have a chance to tell their story. So Robbie was on the show. Now, Robbie, if you remember, Robbie was the guy. Well, when he was a kid, he was the one whose father started traveling with them, and he ended up getting fired from the group because his father started calling out stuff and saying, "Hey, these kids are being treated badly. They're being mistreated. What's going on here?" Him and his dad was there, and another former member was supposed to show up, but at the last minute, they pulled out. And again, like I said, this all overlapped with the end of when those 5 guys resigned or retired or whatever. So the new kids, including Angelo, the one who ended up going to the hospital having an appendix out, this is when he first joined the group. So like I said, it's overlapping. But Robbie was telling his story, and of course, they made it out that all he wanted was money, that this was about money, it was about money. And he said, listen, I love Menudo. I don't like what this guy did to me and what he did to my friends. But I love the group Menudo. I love Menudo. Like he was trying, like letting them know, listen, we need to separate the two. One isn't the same. One doesn't equal the other, And this actually, okay. Okay. This actually started the walls to fall down, because after that, some of the parents of former members actually filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office down in Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, nothing happened. Nothing happened as a result of it. Because again, Eduardo and the Menudo machine was way too popular, way too powerful, and brought too much positive things to Puerto Rico, and so nothing actually happened as a result of in that moment, right? As a result of that complaint. However, it opened the door because now we have all these accusations of not just physical, mental abuse, but now sexual abuse. And a couple of the guys who were members at that time, including Angelo, and a couple of the other guys actually spoke out about, yeah, I was sexually assaulted. This happened to me. One of the mothers, who I felt so bad for her, she was actually on that show, Christine, and she stood up, and her son had just joined the group, and she was like, hey, I don't think any of this is what's going on. My son, he's having a great time. He's not having any of these problems. And they spoke to her now, and she said, listen, we were used. We were used as a pawn to go on the show and talk about how great Menudo was and how great the organization was. She said, and things happened to my son that even to this day he still won't talk to me about. My son was abused. My son was mistreated. And I look back on that and I realized that I was young and I was naive and I was, lied to. Child, we got one more episode, so I guess we're gonna see what finally happens. Now, Eduardo is still alive because at the end they say that they reached out to him, and he refused to comment and he refused to participate. So he's still alive. I'm thinking he might have passed away, but as of the date of this documentary, baby, he was still alive. So anyway, I'll get y'all part 4, and after I get part 4, we're gonna have a live discussion and talk about it. Okay? All right. Talk to y'all later. Peace.